in super training, to now put a footnote to this that to equals the experience of what they labeled it as, it's called leveling abilities, and they have a whole like athleticism matrix within super training book. So our blueprint of athleticism is X axes, hips, think squat, deadlift, hinging.
Sure.
And then we have the lunge, which my pelvis is going to rotate along the Y axis. So rotation of the pelvis, and then a tilt of the pelvis along a Z axis. So tilt of the iliac crest up and down, stepping up, marching, like Cal's example. So the experience with PAP when it's through Power Athlete program is not going X axis, it'd be X and Y or X and Z to then find what you've experienced.
Well, what's wild too is you see people like on Instagram, and it's funny. People are like, oh, we're doing athletic style of training, or you have to train like an athlete, and they're showing somebody jump, and I'm like, all right. So the fact that like that's the basis of your training, that if you're jumping in your train, like it feels so like pedestrian. Like we've gotten so far past that, but like there was who was it? Dr. Huberman had a podcast, and he was talking about putting on muscle. Right. So I listened to it because he's a Thorn guy, and we'd love to get him on in the future. But it was wild. He was going through all these different parameters and how to put on muscle. And all you have to do is look in a fucking bodybuilding magazine for the last 50 years is going to do this. It's like, he's like somewhere between 5 and 15 sets of body part, somewhere between, 5 and 15 reps, 30 to 80%. And like, I was like, dude, Charlie Francis, years ago when I talked to Charlie, made a funny point to me. He talked about sprinting and getting fast. Like you can't train in what he called the no man's land. So if you want to sprint and get fast, you have to run fast, which was 92.5% fast of your fastest. You had to run in that deal. If you were running slower than 92, and then between 92 and 76, let's say, he called the no man's land, but then you're at 75, it's where his tempo runs were. And he made a funny point to me. He goes, where's the majority of strength built? And I was like, I don't know, 76 to 92. He goes, if you look at the bulk of strength training, you'd have almost 90% of all of the percentage and reps and everything in our no man's land. But yet we know if we sprint in the no man's land, we don't get faster. What do you think that means? And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, it means that sprinting and running fast isn't limited by strength. It's about neural efficiency. So he's like, you have to run in these. He goes, so you train in these two places to get faster, but we get stronger in this. So what it means is that, getting strength and like the people are like, oh, you want to get faster, just squat, get stronger in your squat. Well, that'll work to a point where all of a sudden it doesn't work. Right. And so, but it's funny, like as I was watching this podcast and people were like, oh, this is so unbelievable. I'm like, if you've been lifting fucking weights at any time in your life and put on any level of hypertrophy, this is actually what the bodybuilders figured out. I mean, we can bring Jay Cutler on the podcast and he would be like 4 sets of 12. I did 4 to 6 exercises. I trained a body part every 72 hours. Same shit.
It's the same exact stuff. Yeah.
It's like Olympic weightlifting. The strongest guy isn't going to be the best Olympic weightlifter. It's the person that can create the most force and has enough elasticity and speed to pull themselves under the bar in that second pull. Right. And then the grit just to stand the fuck up with it.
I would say that in weightlifting though, we're more like sprinting. Like of course, Prilipin is the one who said that whoever can stay above 9% the most is going to be the one who gets better at weightlifting. It's because there's a big difference in like people can get really darn good at 80, 85% snatch and clean jerking. But then the minute they go to 90 and they suck, it's like whoever can really get their body, built well enough to go above 90%. And I said this when I first came into the weightlifting world, I was talking about this and a lot of the American coaches were like saying, you're crazy. You're a power lifter. You're just trying to go heavy all the time. And guess what? Now there's a whole new, now these weightlifting coaches are now, it's a whole new thing that is how often above 9%. Of course, it's like, what is that? What do we do when we do weightlifting? We're above 9% and we got to get really good. But you got to remember, it's not in powerlifting, like you're not going that fast. And so in weightlifting, you're moving really fast with really heavy weight, and neurologically you got to get good moving your heaviest weights really fast. And so I would agree with Charlie Francis 100%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Louis said the same thing. We're not trying to be the best at reps. You know, like, I mean,
Yeah.
and you know, Louis was, I spent a ton of time with Lou and count him to be one of the smartest people I've ever been around for this stuff. He made a great point where it's like, I'm not trying to get these guys really good at reps on their core movements. I'm going to have them, you know, because I need them to be able to be good at one heavy movement, which is their sport specific. We're going to get a ton of volume in our accessory work. I'm not trying to get them volume underneath the bar. And it made a ton of sense. I mean, since then there's guys like Dan Green and all these other, kind of raw power lifters that have trained with more volume and been successful. And Ed Cohen trained with volume and all this. But at the end of the day, in a powerlifting meet, you get paid for one rep. It's not like, hey, my first one sucked. Hold on, let me get another one. Right. And so Louis was like, I'm not training somebody to have the best second rep. And the thing I always loved about Lou is the fucking one-liners. I wish I had a book of them all. But he made that point to me. He's like, I'm not trying to get them the best at the second rep. No. You know, I'm not trying to have them, to be the best at reps. And it made a ton of sense, especially in the Olympic weightlifting thing, where you're like, hey, man, we only get one chance to go out there and snatch one rep or clean and jerk one rep. If I don't start looking good until the third rep, now we're going to have issues.